Good afternoon. Thank you so much for joining us today. We have a really interesting webinar for you today, all about AI. So building AI solutions, a step-by-step guide to creating value for your organization. As always, if you have any questions, please write them in the comments and we'll go through them at the end. It'd be really great to have some good conversation about this. So I would like to introduce our first speaker, and it is Brett, the 101 Data Solutions CEO.
Hi there, I'm Brett, CEO of 101 Data Solutions. Our business is a focus on data management, data optimization, data security, and amongst those subject matters, we work very much with artificial intelligence and how to curate data to get the most out of it. Over to you, Michael.
That picture there is from a long time ago, Brett. That's that you've been catfishing everyone in the audience.
I'm just wondering who that is.
Hi, I'm Michael. I'm here to talk about building AI solutions within companies, really. So what gives me the right to have this conversation? I've been in C-suite positions for the past 6 years in AI-driven startups. I have basically built teams from 0 to 7. 0 to 7 in terms of the size to kind of implement these solutions, pipelining, worked in NLP for the past 6 years, had successes, had some failures. I'm going to share some of that with Brett.
Cool. Sounds like a plan. Okay. GenAI.
GenAI.
Go ahead. Yeah.
If I was to, if I was to ask you, what does it mean to you? Because it's kind of a term that's used a lot. What's GenAI? What's the difference between that and AI? What's even ML and AI? Which is a serious question, because I had to really kind of Google search this and think about it as well.
Generative AI, it does it itself.
Yeah, that's a good answer.
Or not?
That's a good answer.
One point there.
Basically, I'd have to kind of think. I'd have to think about. I'd have to. Sorry, there's a bit of noise. I would say that Gen AI is essentially any kind of artificial intelligence system that creates something for you. So here, and this is analogous to classification, where you give it data and it tells you something. So it doesn't necessarily create it labels. So instead of being predictive, this is something that's creative. And really, that's kind of what you can kind of see with ChatGPT, DALL-E. You give it something to start with, some context, and you say, create this. So whether that be a PDF slides to kind of help you with a proposal, whether it's just a story, etc. I mean, do you kind of agree with that? Or what do you think?
Yeah, I think so. And I think it's critical in defining the right types of data for the output that you want. Certainly my experience and what I've seen is we want that information to be relevant to the outcome. Would that be fair to say? Good observation?
I mean, you need to know what outcome you want, really, I guess, as well. So I guess, and this is you and me specifically. So when we're using ChatGPT or any kind of model, whether you're what do you want to see out of it, and what does good mean to you? So so I mean, what does good mean to you? So for instance, in terms of a bidding, can I I think my internet connection is bad. Can I?
Yeah. You go ahead for a sec. Just bear with for 1 minute.
Sorry, restarted it.
There you go. You're good. Back in the room.
So where were we?
So we were talking about information, generative AI, and outcomes of that, providing data to get sensible outputs from
your inputs, basically. So you need to kind of whatever is happening under the hood, you really need to know what is good when it comes out. So if it's generate me a structure for a PDF for some bidding proposal, you kind of need to know what you already have, and does this match that? And essentially, how much time did you save in actually telling your team to do that, or are you doing it yourself? So this is kind of I guess
So with the growth of AI, a lot of people are talking about it, and I'm seeing here from this slide that you've put up, that's an incredible amount of investment that's gone on from 21 billion to 237 billion.
Yeah.
A significant amount. So in your experience, what have you seen? You saying that a lot more businesses are pivoting towards AI, or what is that investment? Where is it coming from?
Good question. Yeah. So this is, I believe it's something like 20% of the kind of total revenue in all of tech, but essentially it's gone up by a lot. And we'll see in the next graph, kind of it's really been the last, let's say 3 or 4 years, and why that is. But it's essentially, so there's been companies that have not necessarily even pivoted in AI, have made AI the, I guess, the hype in which they even get the investment. So they will say, hey, I have a cool AI idea to use AI, and then this is where the investment comes, but we'll see how that kind of backfires. But really the pivoting, I think, has been slow in terms of companies that have a genuine kind of USP. But really this comes from really the hype around the use cases, and why is there any hype at all? So let's go to the next slide.
It's quite interesting you say that. It's sort of, for those who are around, the .com era. So in 1999, I remember I was working with Sun Microsystems and a few other, and there was a significant amount of investment going into technology and reskilling around .com. You know, I wouldn't say weaponize everything. So put your shop up, and you'd go to the bank with a PowerPoint presentation and say, hey, look, I've got this wonderful idea and I'm going to sell billions of pounds of product online. And that caused quite a significant change in once the .com bubble burst. Do you think that to draw similarities to this? You say there's a massive increase on your last slide about LinkedIn, people skilling up and tooling up, and people going to get funding with their AI ideas.
No, that's a good question. And actually, like, I mean, we don't know. You don't know if you're in a bubble. So that is a question. Is this a bubble? A lot of people probably say yes. When is it going to burst? Has it burst in 2023 and this is the up? Or maybe the concept of bubbles doesn't really apply to this. This is going to, but yeah, it's essentially what's, maybe to be more practical, what's hype and what's actually practical, and how do we differentiate between the two?
Yeah, that's key. You know, what is hype and what is practical? Definitely.
I mean, you can kind of just say, do the lines represent the hype? So what happened at these points? So end of November 2022.
What is this we're looking at again? So this chart does what? Sorry.
So global investment in AI startups in the past 10 years. So last year we had something like 237 billion, I believe, and 2025 is obviously an extrapolation. So I picked a conservative estimate of about 300 billion, but really it could shoot up to
globally.
Globally, yeah. But yeah, I mean, it's underpinned by a couple of key events. I would say 2017, 2023. So 2023, you had ChatGPT. So this is the first time really that the public starts talking to a system or a computer that they thought was intelligent. And it was pretty clear just from each kind of input, every time you typed to it, how intelligent it was. It was actually had a lot of emergent aspects of it that I guess maybe even the original developers didn't necessarily know. For instance, the amount of good outcomes you came from in-context learning. So what does that mean? It just means that if you were to start it off with a paragraph, I am a CEO of a company that has X amount of employees, blah, 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 and I would like to make a PDF to do this, and you let it carry on. Given the fact that you've just given that, it sort of tends to give you a little bit of sense in terms of the output. So the generation is really kind of central to the kind of context you give it. But this was an emergent phenomenon that we didn't really expect, I guess. But essentially here, after ChatGPT, I think everybody saw that this really has a lot of value.
So I know you were going to go back to, what do you say, 2013, but whilst we're hanging around 23, why was there a significant dip in investment?
Yeah, so I mean, that could be partly attributed, I would say, to things like recessions and macroeconomic conditions from globally, wars, etc. But also, there's a large amount that can be attributed to investor hesitance from the previous year's hype as well, which comes from 2017, in which there's something like a large amount of companies that said that they were going to utilize AI, but didn't necessarily have a business, strong USB business value. So they didn't really figure that one out, just trying to, I guess, build a ChatGPT wrapper around something that didn't really exist. I don't know what.
No, that's interesting. Sorry,
I mean, have you come across, I guess, any of those in your extensive career?
Yes and no. The spread between people are thinking and the people are doing. There's more thinking and wanting to understand, and I think that is getting the understanding right before driving into an AI way of working. We do work with some let's say early adopters. I'm talking about early adopters like 3, 4 years, 5 years ago, where they've got a finished solution that is actually in production and being used.
Mm-hmm.
But the only comment I can make on that is that the outcome was very clear from the start, the ones that are in production.
Mm-hmm.
So whether it be image or whatever it very well may be, they knew exactly what they wanted to achieve, and now have a simple use case and are achieving it with the aid of AI, and it works. So they're now on the next iterations of what they want to be doing.
Do you think it's this is out of curiosity? Is it based off I guess maybe a personal relationship or just kind of understanding? Do you think it's because they understood the technical challenges, or they navigated through technical challenges that they didn't know well because they already had a firm base? Or
they understood the technical challenges and were very autonomous in their research and understanding of the process. Where we filled the gaps was what resource you need to run that process, if you see what I mean, because there's certain resource large language models need, etc. But they had a clear understanding. Yeah. Sorry, you were going to say about 2013, did you say?
So I mean, that's essentially kind of the rise from 2023. You would imagine from 2017 upwards, before the dip. 2017. I mean, I would say that's probably the seminal moment in deep learning and really generative AI. It's probably going to be a paper that is heavily cited 50 years down the line, and that was a paper called "Attention is All You Need," which really at the time was kind of sort of flew under the hood a little bit in terms of the actual impact, but it was essentially trying to solve a machine translation problem, and it introduced the world to a type of processor called the transformer, which really underpinned all of these large language models and how they were able to process in a parallelized way such large amounts of data. But that was a means to an end in the paper, and specifically on top of that, they introduced something called the attention mechanism. Essentially, this is kind of a way in which the tokens of the words within what you're encoding can give the relevance of their meaning with respect to the other words and their meaning. Basically, it's able to encode context in a very, very good way, and long range dependencies. So that's just a way of saying it's able to remember the context from a long time ago, like we do as humans.
Okay. Yeah.
Because before then, really, once you went past a sentence of 10 words, it really started to quantitatively decrease when you were training.
So you would get nonsense, like not relevant after a certain length of words feedback.
I guess you would say it's more that the ways in which the architectures was built meant that it kind of forgot the meanings of the words in ways that we knew as human beings. No, you should remember it.
Oh, I see. Yeah.
And there's ways that we kind of patched things using LSTMs, etc. But really, it was kind of very patchy. And actually, I guess the main point here is we had to process everything sequentially. So we had things like R and N. So essentially, we had to process each of the words after the kind of processing the words before then. But with transformers, we got to parallelize that, so we didn't have to wait, and that kind of made the compute more efficient. But yeah, essentially after that, I guess that's the rise of OpenAI, all of the other kind of models and companies that kind of came along with it, and the hype as well. And you'd say from 2021, possibly COVID had an impact on that as well. There was a dip, and yet from 2012 onwards, there was just a slow rise, and this was from companies like DeepMind, who had the AlphaGo algorithm. I think there was a documentary in 2016, an interesting documentary. Go was seen as the hardest game for a computer to really beat a human being, more so because you couldn't really use brute force as most other computers could. There was a genuine level of intelligence there that when it beat the world's Go champion, people sort of took note. They didn't know what was happening under the hood, but they saw that, okay, there must be some reasoning there in the machine that we don't really understand. How can we apply that? In 2012, Hinton's team, I guess, in the ImageNet competition showed deep learning was really a very proficient algorithm in order to solve these complex problems. So that's kind of what caused the slow rise, in my opinion. And
there was life. Someone discovered life.
Yeah, this is the evolution.
Yeah, cool. All right, thank you for that overview. Should we move on to next?
Yeah, next. I mean, I guess this is kind of what we were saying in the previous slides, sharp dip, global conditions, and investor hesitation. So how can we use that to frame things going forward? So maybe go to the next slide. So in terms of the global investment from last year, 237 billion, 90% is going to go to 5 companies, essentially: OpenAI, Anthropic, Google, NVIDIA, and Meta. The other 10% is going to be from SaaS companies who have an existing USP or business value that are looking to implement it invisibly under the hood to help internal processes or help businesses. And there's going to be 1% that are going to be hype driven. Most will fail. Some, like Hugging Face, Mistral, Perplexity, the next OpenAI, they're going to genuinely create a USP around this. But I would say that this conversation really would be focused on those 10% of SaaS companies that already have the business value. And I think that's kind of where we could maybe be of use here, because really we don't have to have the conversation about, well, you need to have the value first. And at first we assume, right, you already have an existing business. How can we just implement a thing? How can we implement GenAI low risk in an efficient way so you can kind of understand some of the pros and cons in a systematic way? I don't know if you agree.
Yeah, so SaaS companies, just get my head around that. Would that not be, so a company that's established a unique product that they've got a client base, and that product is based around different data sets, different pieces of valuable information that users come to them to gain access to? Would that be a sensible way of saying that?
Something that other than the AI itself, there is value. So it could be a company that has a unique data set that no other company can replicate. So that's a unique USP that you didn't put GenAI to leverage from. Something with a unique product, let's say a Atlassian with Jira or something like that. They have a software development program that actually works algorithmically. So how can you improve upon that? There's already a base. So how can we seamlessly use these tools to improve those processes?
Got it. Thank you. Understood. So how do we do that then?
I mean, I'll give you my opinion. You can kind of tell me tell me what you think. But
No.
I really think with this, so essentially a fast tempo. So a fast tempo just to convince yourself if the thing works or not. So let's make some assumptions here on these SaaS businesses. Let's say you are a traditional business, you have a internal development team, you've probably got a data science team maybe. So there's already a technical understanding there. And you're thinking, I've seen this Gen AI on the news, maybe we can use some of that. So in 1 week, have you got an idea that you can prototype on your laptop and show that has some legs that you can then invest the next 3 to 6 months building it out in?
Right.
So for instance, you can, one of the things that people talk about now are the two main things are retrieval augmented generative systems, and agentic systems. So essentially here, when we talk about what an LLM is, what would you say?
Large language model.
Yeah, I mean, what would you say in technical terms, how it's defined?
No idea, Mike.
I mean, in going around in the internet as well,
it knows a lot. It knows a lot of things.
It knows a lot of things. Yeah.
It knows a lot of things because it's been given a lot of things.
So I follow a guy on YouTube called Andre Karpathy, and I believe he was the chief science officer of Tesla. He worked at OpenAI. Really, one of the most innovative people in AI, but also very good communicator and teacher. So he spends his time on YouTube just teaching people stuff. And He said that he likes to define basically GPT-4 or GPT-3 as a person introducing themselves, and it's hi, I'm GPT 3.5, etc. I'm a 1 terabyte zip file compressed that can fit on your hard drive. I read the entirety of the internet 6 months ago, and I remember it vaguely, but not too bad. And that's basically it. It's a static thing that was trained some time ago. So really, you're not going to get any new information other than what was compressed. But there is some residual understanding. But really, that zip file gives you context and gives you language and gives you a certain amount of understanding. But how do you then make it useful for relevant data right now? So something that is A, maybe not retrievable via the internet, B, behind a firewall that is actually useful to you. So something like internal documents, a database. Can we bang this context or contextual understanding onto the actual static data to then give you a sort of company specific RAG-doc? And that's basically what this is. Retrieval, you retrieve it from the database, and augmented generation, you're augmenting the output via this LLM. So
sorry, just explain RAG to me one more time.
So if you think about
in a high level, because
okay. So do you have you've probably given a bunch of talks in your time with 101 Data Solutions, and all of the stuff lies in SharePoint slides and PDFs and here and there. That's the thing you want to retrieve. That's your data. So that's the thing you're going to retrieve, and augmented and maybe specific parts of the data, such as the amount you spent with a company on this. So those bits, monetary values, etc. That's the bit you retrieve. Augmented generation is just, let's just say a person who took that and is saying it in a compliant and nice way to the client, etc. So instead of just going 33%, it's the output of last year, blah, 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 blah. Gives a bit of contextual understanding.
Personifying it as a person. It's making it sound like a human being. It's
making it sound like a human being,
easier for us to not get offended by, or easier for us to say, oh, thanks very much, chat GPT 4.5.
And also worth saying on top of that, you don't necessarily have to use GPT 3.5 for any large language model to do the augmented generation. If that data is has some kind of privacy issues around it, if it's kind of internal to customers, if it's healthcare records, you can distill down the model, put it somewhere secure on-prem and use that. But also on top of it, you can fine-tune it, they call it. So essentially just say, hey, instead of just being generic, you know a little bit about finance, so actually answer it in a kind of financially astute way, or however
Got it.
your actual vertical kind of needs to be said.
And this is something that I'm aware of things like Copilot and data security and privacy on documentations and what you present to these models. What's your view? You're saying about using anonymized data to prove quick value, because it can be a nightmare, because most people have data all over their infrastructure, but it may be contextually relevant to something that's sat over here on one system and something sat over here to another system. And there's a piece of work to do there to try and find it and then put it together, and that in itself might take a long time to do, it might take a short time to do. Are you saying with this point that the anonymized data, so what does that mean? It's just take out certain bits?
This would be a question that kind of I would have. So if I were to hear, hey, be quick and just prove the value, just show this model works, and you have really kind of, you've built your entire company around data privacy, and this is part of your kind of profile.
Right.
Surely moving fast is bad. You should move slow and methodical. I would say, think about it this way. How could you in 1 week show that this particular an agentic system or a RAG system, let's say, how could you show that this is going to work on all of your data, but with an anonymized set? So just essentially take the PII out, or just generate new data that's structured in the same way. So PDFs with different fonts, etc. So how can you, having to think about it that way. So if you think about it that way, you might be able to answer the question that, hey, maybe this retrieval augmented system isn't really fit for that. If you think about it that way, like what's the structure of the data, and how is it siloed in a way that a dynamic system like this can help anyway, that, you know, a simpler automated one wouldn't.
Yeah, got it.
But yeah, really, I guess the key thing here is just to move as quickly as possible with this, just to maybe convince yourself and convince the rest of the stakeholders. So maybe just throw out a scenario here. Maybe there's been a push from management to utilize GenAI because it's the new thing. It's kind of landed on your desk, and you're like, okay, how do I do this in a systematic way? Try to move fast and try to figure out a way of building out these prototypes. Maybe yourself on your laptop is quite, there are some tools that kind of help you do this using a GUI, but how do you prove to yourself that this particular algorithm is the simplest way to solve the problem that that an existing solution wouldn't?
Okay.
Also, I would say, maybe move to the next slide.
Yeah.
So yeah, kind of like how does this all work? I think really with SaaS companies, this is a new technology, really. So everybody's upskilling to an extent. I think kind of starting and getting some input, some momentum from your existing team. So your dev team or your data science team who kind of have an interest in this, maybe kind of set aside some workflow time in which your tech lead, who has an interest in this, and more importantly, has an understanding of the existing pipeline that they probably built, the business pain points, and then try to see if some of these prototypes could help any of that. Because then you kind of start with basically the cultural shift comes from the internal champion. So really you have to believe yourself and be the ones driving it. And that really I think that really kind of comes internally. I don't think you can you might be able to hire a person that kind of comes in, but they might not have the real nitty gritty understanding of what.
Yeah. And every company's pretty much different, especially if they've got long-term established ways of working.
Exactly.
You're sort of seeing this more, from my view, I'm seeing this more as an added value function to an existing way of working and an existing data sets.
Yes, and that's exactly what this talk is gonna concern. Like, how can you integrate yourself seamlessly when you already have that USP? You already have processes that work, so you can measure it with. Now that you have the processes that work, you can measure it with essentially KPIs that make sense. So if it's let's just say you want to integrate it into your company, is it going to be internal or external? Are you going to just work on internal documents in which it's kind of low risk, to help the retrieval for members of your team and the rest of the company to kind of make it a bit quicker, make it a bit more seamless. So their time spent would be a good KPI. But even just before it, you don't need to go too bogged down into KPIs. If after a week you start to, you can talk to this thing on a subset of your documents and people see it's actually with a low amount of risk and ease, you can see it's giving you sensible results. That's good enough, you know. Just you don't need to kind of get bogged down with numbers that you don't understand. Just you can just see.
Yep, that makes sense. Perfect sense. Yeah, absolutely, 100%. That's a simple way of looking at it. A very simple way of looking at it. This is what we have available. This is what we started using and creating. Where do they match? We know this is going to be very good in this case, and it's proven. And the stakeholders are engaged in that process. Is that what you mean by like, I know I'm moving on to the third point, but your feedback loops, is that something? Is that?
Yes. So I mean, this is before you even go into production. So first of all, convincing yourself, the stakeholders, that this is a thing worth spending the next 3 to 6 months. So that's going to be the buy-in. So you're gonna do this in 1 week for the first prototype, and let's just say a couple of weeks before you decide to pitch to management, hey, I'm gonna actually invest a large amount of time in this with internal team, maybe some hirings or etc. But yeah, essentially move fast, break things. And I think it's something that I've had to kind of learn as well with this GenAI shift, that I would obsess over getting like as high accuracy as I could before deploying it, because really you kind of want perfection. But should be 80% now, then 100% never is better. And also things like Microsoft Copilot, they know that it's not perfect, but the data that they're getting in terms of usage, you're going to see a much better product in a year or so's time.
Yeah. You're spending time to teach that robot things and then correcting it when it's wrong.
Yeah, exactly. Maybe we move on to the next slide.
Yeah.
I mean, essentially the same thing. So move from proof to concept to production fast. Next slide. But I mean, I guess before the questions, we've got 1 or so minute. I would say, what would you say would be the lessons that, where do you think that this is going in terms of the shift? So kind of what I'm going is there going to be a new type of UX that we might need to kind of incorporate? What does the future hold, in your opinion?
Yeah, I think people need to get a simplistic view of it. Like you said, you've spent a long time working in this space and you've worked for perfection from the off. But the learning from that is you don't want to be doing that from the off. It's a process. It's not a install, configure, then it starts working. It's a continual process with different stakeholders. So I think, reflecting on what you're saying, it's not a 1 month process, it's a 6 months process. It doesn't have to be all consuming. It needs to be started, then nurtured on a regular basis, with the intention of producing something that's valuable over time. So you're not going to say it's here, like traditional tech projects. So we start here and we're going to finish here. It doesn't seem to work like that. Would that be a fair summary?
I mean, I guess as you were saying it, I mean, really the key of it, people are kind of touting it, is like, look at what you can do very simply by wrapping natural language around it. So if you can't prototype it and show really, really quickly. So I guess like the point is, maybe it doesn't need to be all consuming and a very perfection driven process like we are used to. And I strive for perfection because we don't achieve it very rarely as well. So, but yeah, I guess one of the other take home points I thought was quite interesting was that the natural language being the new interface. So everything, basically you talk to the machines via prompt engineering, and also looking at AI as a colleague and not a tool. So looking at it as something with a job description rather than something with a function. So I thought that was quite useful in terms of.
We're going to give it a job description.
Yeah.
You're right. Yeah, you are right. This is what we want to achieve. That's a good way of putting it. Good way of putting it. Hi, Tash. I suppose we've got
Hi.
and if there's any questions.
Yes, there is some. Thank you so much. That was super interesting. There are some questions, so I'll read them out if that's okay. I'll put them on the screen.
You have to answer it, Brett.
So how do we define and measure value when it comes to AI solutions?
I'll let you handle that, Michael.
I think I heard the phone. I need to go. Like what does your company do? What problem are you trying to solve? What is a realistic number that matches to the ephemeral thing that value is? It's the thing that people always say, like, so maybe pick a thing, pick a random example, and let's try to figure it out, because this is how it works. Like, pick a random example.
I haven't got a random example.
Let's say I'll pick a random off the top of my head. We want to use a RAG system in this company, 101 Data Solutions, to help save time. So one of them is going to be, well, how much time are you currently spending by looking through these documents? How many you have? How much are you? I mean, time equates to money. So basically, how much of that time, how much of company spend are you paying people to kind of basically, I guess, waste time looking through these things? Morale as well. Maybe implementing this will kind of uplift morale. So there's a bunch of different things, but yeah. So time saved, cost spent, potential revenue that you can gain. Those are the high level things. But really, I would say that's the high level things that you show the stakeholders. But the low level things is just you can kind of need to be measurable, kind of on a 1 week basis.
Makes sense. Lovely. Next question we have is from David Smith. How much of an ongoing issue are hallucinations?
Thanks, David. It's probably the issue that is really causing a bit of, I guess, fear, but apprehension for most SaaS companies in wanting to just.
Can I just ask, what is a hallucination? I know what a hallucination is.
It's when you've had too much ayahuasca.
That's the hallucination I know about, but in context of AI.
It's a word that people are using now to describe when an LLM gives you an incorrect answer or an answer which is out of context. So an incorrect answer would be, I don't know, who won the World Cup in 1966, West Germany. A out of context answer would be, how much did my company spend on toilet paper in the past 3 years? And you've got the data here, but it says, I don't know, paintbrushes, or it says tells you a wrong number. It's a big issue, really, a big issue. I think it's probably the number one issue which kind of stops people from kind of adopting this. And I would say the answer to this is, how do we define how big of an issue it is with the system that you're implementing quantitatively, to really kind of give yourself some a bit of confidence that just implementing it will be fine. So I would say with these tools, you get to have a democratization in terms of how they're actually performing. So back in the day, when I would present this sort of stuff to stakeholders, I would say, look, I've got a test set that I've made myself, and there's 90% accuracy with this rock curve, blah, blah, and then I'd say, no, believe me, because I've seen these before and these work. Now, every single person in the company can prompt the thing, you get answers back, and you can see that, you can really see how it's performing in terms of what you put in. But also, even when I fine tune these models, I'm doing it via actually prompting the model. I'm telling it, hey, think through this problem. So really you can see as a data scientist how to kind of control the hallucinations with natural language, even in fine tuning. But yeah, essentially understand what out of context is, understand what is a hallucination, understand how big of an impact that hallucination is on your business. So if it's just a chatbot that maybe retrieves things and it's okay to get 1 to 2% things wrong, maybe that's okay. If you're giving healthcare advice or something with finance, maybe that 1% is not tolerable for you. So it really depends on the thresholds you have.
Thanks. Appreciate that.
Okay, last question. Again from David. What does a good framework for an AI job spec look like?
That is a really good question. I've kind of seen a lot of them. As for like, I would say from the perspective of, like the actual AI developer, AI architect, don't want and to the person trying to get the job at the company, don't put things in the job spec that basically say you want a unicorn. That's the case for, I guess, everything. Like, this has happened since the dawn of time. You need to do this. That's happened since the dawn of time. But really what you see now is they're asking for LLM ops, cloud understanding, and then actually the model implementation, so the whole full stack. So wanting a full stack developer, but within LLMs that have only really been around for 2 years or so, I would say do this practically. Think about if you want them on the server side, so you're basically managing the models and the architecture and the load balancing, etc., or you want them on the model development side. Which one and why? So I say a good framework essentially understands which one of those two they want and tailors it to that. And
can I just jump in there? Also, just to cover off the job spec for the actual AI bot itself, we talked about you almost have to give the AI a job spec. That means understanding its duties it needs to fulfill each day, what the intended use is, what it's going to be doing, and when it's going to be doing it, and what with. So it's breaking it down into job responsibilities almost, and looking through that.
100%, and I think this kind of reflects back around to us as well. So a lot of the I guess pushback I kind of see with these LLMs is like, oh, it's not giving me the right answer. But most of the time it's in our prompting. And how many times I've had this before where I might ask a team member to do something and they've done something else. That's my fault for not describing the thing that I wanted properly. And really, you've probably seen some of the way like speak, it might be incoherent. So really, like it's what are you asking this thing to do, and have you described it coherently? But maybe another question is, how much are we willing to let these systems be autonomous and have decisions over specific things? That's where it's going. And what decisions are we okay with? Are there a lot of low-level repetitive tasks that really just require a tiny bit of sort of, okay, I can do this, I can do that? Or are we willing to give it some larger responsibilities and maybe even tell us what we should be doing? Now we're going into kind of deeper.
Yeah, well, that's almost like a career trajectory of someone. They'll start in sifting whatever, calendar invites, and they may be planning the architecture of a multi-sited data center. Do you see what I mean? Through time, but that only comes with experience and mentoring during that route of travel. But from what you're saying here and what I'm taking away from it is very much how we should be looking at it when we start working with these systems. If you want that person to be the organizer of this and that alone, that's fine.
Look at it as a colleague, really. So and design it like a colleague, because some of these agentic systems and these RAG systems, they work best with those kind of low level decision making that can be kind of be prompted, so and I actually look at it as a colleague as well. I use LLMs to audit other LLMs, and I get them to just talk to each other and balance them out. But hey, that's me.
All right.
And I talk to ChatGPT like a friend, but maybe
I love that.
Yeah. Okay. All right, Michael.
Thank
you.
Well, thank you everybody for joining us today, and thank you so much, Michael and Brett. That was super interesting.
Yes, thanks.
If you have any questions afterwards, please let us know, and we'll answer them. But again, thank you so much, guys. That was super interesting.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Cheers, Mike.